All right, I will bring the February 21st, 2023 Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call.
Kate Thomas,
Here.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Jim Hansen,
Present.
Clay Cologne,
Here.
Jamie Clapham,
Here.
and Michael Berkland.
Here.
And tonight we have Randy Brock for the invocation, please.
Thank you for allowing me to pray tonight. Let's pray. Father, I'm always grateful for people who say yes to serve and to give of themselves, Lord. And so I pray blessing upon every one of these board members and for all the decisions that are going to be made tonight, Lord God. I would pray this, that there would be the wisdom of King Solomon and the heart of King David. Let them know your heart, Lord Jesus. And for all the counselors we have in the seats that'll be speaking on things, Lord God, that are important to them. We know that the scripture says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. So Lord, let there be righteous decisions tonight, Lord God, that are good for everyone, Lord God, especially our children. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will need an approval of the proposed agenda or a motion, but I am going to be pulling 5B, the Nurse of the Year, only because they couldn't make it tonight because of the weather. And item 6, executive session. With that, I need a motion in a second.
So moved.
We need a roll call on that.
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Clay,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, on to sharing the success. We do have Nicole Swaggart up for 2 items now.
Thank you, President Thomas. My favorite part of the evening. Tonight, I get to recognize the Board of Education. That is a huge success. It is School Board Recognition Week, and I would like to read this. The Rapid City area schools will join districts across the state to thank school board members for their leadership and service to our local school district and community during the School Board Recognition Week for South Dakota, February 20th through 24th. This is a great opportunity to recognize our school board for their dedication to our children and our community. The men and women serving the Rapid City area schools and their years of service are President Kate Thomas, 7 years. First Vice President Bishop Troy Carr, 2 years. Second Vice President Deb Baker, 2 years. Board Member Jim Hansen, 9 years. Board Member Jamie Clapham, 1 year. Board Member Clay Cologne, 2 years. Board Member Michael Berkland, 1 year. This group is responsible for leading Rapid City area schools in working toward our vision and the goals for the district. Rapid City Area Schools Board of Education strives to provide a quality education for our students. The school board also hires quality educators and employees, adopts policy, and evaluates progress while always keeping the best interest of our students in mind. During School Board Recognition Week, the Rapid City Area School invites students, staff, and the community members to take part in thanking its school board members. As elected leaders, school board members serve as the link between the school and the community. They work tirelessly for our students, staff, and community, and they deserve a round of applause. Thank you. We're going to hold off on celebrating South Dakota school nurse till next week due to the weather. But the other thing I want to recognize tonight, and I would like to have Bobby Joe Donovan join me up here. It is CTE, College and Technical Education Month. Their slogan is Celebrate Today, Own Tomorrow. Career and Technical Education Month proclamation. Whereas February 1st through the 28th of 2023 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education. And whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness. And whereas our 56 career and technical education teachers provide secondary students authentic, meaningful experiences, which improve the quality of their education and increases their engagement and achievement. And whereas our 3 middle school career and technical education programs provide students with career exploration opportunities, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about future high school coursework, and it is foundational to the new Rapid City Area Schools academies. And whereas our 10 high school career and technical education programs of study and capstone experiences, which link to post-secondary training, industry recognized credentials, and 2- and 4-year college degrees. And whereas leaders from the business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, education, finance and accounting, and construction and technical trades. And whereas the career and technical education programs ensure that employers have access to qualified and a thriving workforce, ensuring Rapid City and the Black Hills region have a strong and competitive economy. Therefore, I, Nicole Swigert, do hereby declare February in Rapid City Area Schools as Career and Technical Education Month. That's all, President Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we have persons wishing to address the board. Just a quick reminder, I think everyone on this list has spoken here before, but quick reminder that issues that affect individuals or particular schools should be addressed there first at the building level. Speakers should focus their main points and not be repetitive. Personal matters or complaints that directly or indirectly identify an employee shall not be discussed. And to maintain a civil dialogue, threats and intimidation are not allowed. And we have our first speaker, Sean Nielsen.
Thank you, board. First of all, I want to thank you very much for your resolution that you passed on the 7th of February, opposing the proposed social studies standards. Timing was really important as the state was in our town that Friday. I'm encouraged that it was grounded in common sense. It acknowledged research and best practices. Although this board is not the final decision maker, we know that passing this resolution sends the message that you are listening to your teachers and others who are concerned. Let's not forget that teachers are the frontline employees and are the first to be impacted by this proposal if adopted. Educators in the public school classroom often partner with parents, by the way, to determine what methods are best for our students. This is a hard copy of all of the public comments submitted to date. 1,094 comments have been submitted, and I am impressed and excited that that many people have decided to become involved. Of the 1,094, 940 are in opposition to these standards. That's 85%. I have stayed close to this process from day one. You know that I've been involved with both commissions, and I have read every comment over the months that they have been published on the South Dakota Department of Education website. As I told the members of the Board of Education Standards, the people have spoken, and there is no question about the direction that they wish to take. These are parents, grandparents, community members, and teachers. This is not the union speaking like some proponents continue to say. It is the people at large weighing in on the content and the process. Public discourse continues, and I have noticed that more and more proponents are starting to ask for revisions or a compromise. I'm encouraged that so many people, like I said, have become involved. When was the last time this many people commented on any proposed standards in our state? This should tell us something. There's a lot at stake, and I'm hopeful in the end that the common sense will prevail. Thank you for listening tonight and for your service to our community.
Thank you. Next speaker, Sarah Gross.
Good morning, board. My name is Sarah Gross, and I haven't introduced myself in a little while. So I am a parent, number one, and a teacher. And I am a nationally board certified teacher, and I finished up my doctorate in educational leadership recently. I say those things because I started my day testifying in front of the Senate Ed Committee about the standards. And I too want to thank you as a board for the resolution at the meeting from the 7th. After speaking so often at these meetings since September and following the study session, it was just amazing to have that resolution from this board. I'm not sure if you noticed on Wednesday, the 8th, there was an ad or a statement by over 300 local teachers and retired educators against the proposed standards in the Journal. And I believe more would have signed on if it had been widely known. The Senate Ed, I've kind of gotten hooked into listening to their meetings. And so this morning I had an opportunity at 7 a.m. to testify and took that because I do believe that that committee should be made up of a mix of stakeholders, but primarily be educational professionals if they're making decisions for the K-12 system. So that was my first item. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Each and every one of you, I've spent time talking with some of you, and I appreciate your time and your willingness to listen. Second, if I understand correctly, the applications for the superintendent were due nearly 6 weeks ago. We really haven't heard about any interview process or progress on hiring or even how many candidates there were. And so I'm curious about that. Third, I know I have a list tonight, but although I understand that finances are a top concern, I'm very sad to learn that our Director of Facilities, Kumar, is no longer with us. And following all those Senate Ed hearings, I know that the state is talking about more education funding, and I always want to think that it's going to go straight to where I want it to, but I know that that formula is very, very complicated. And so I know that it's a cost saving, and he was so graceful in the Journal with what he said about the school district and his willingness to help, but I really want to thank him for his service over time. And then finally, I think it's 11C, the Board of Education area map. I'm hoping that someone will pull that and there'll be some discussion. Looking at the maps online, it was a little tricky to figure out what was being changed. So as always, thank you so much for your service and your time and listening tonight.
Thank you. Next speaker, Florence Thompson.
Good evening, board. My name is Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education. I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years experience in the schools. I'm also grandmother of a public school student. So I have a lot of different hats to wear in this. Since the RCAS school board saw fit to have a study session on the proposed social studies standards with only opponents presenting, we are requesting, in the interests of fairness and wisdom, that another study session be scheduled for the proponents of the new standards to have equal time with the board. The current social studies standards have produced poor results. As you know, across the country, young people are especially very ignorant of our government functioning and of our history. So our civics standards that we currently have are rated as C- or mediocre. History was rated as D+ or inadequate. The new proposed standards are called knowledge rich, as opposed to skills-based process. Our teachers are used to the Common Core, which was a skills-based curriculum. And so they're used to seeing what Sandra Stotsky called empty standards. These are knowledge-rich standards, so they have a lot of detail in them. They're not lesson plans, they're standards. But in history, knowledge is one of your goals. That's what you want to partake to your students. You are educating them. You are passing along knowledge. The powerful education lobbyists have been working overtime to stampede the teachers and administrators and school boards across the state, not just here, against the new standards and in favor of the previous proposed politicized and content poor standards. These people have a hidden agenda, and it's not to represent you. I'm talking about the lobbyists. They are beholden to national and international organizations which have a woke agenda. It is not a patriotic American agenda. Beware of their advice. They are paid to manipulate you. I have 2 handouts here. I apologize, I should have run off more copies, but my printer was getting kind of gray, so I think it probably wouldn't work. This one has quite a few pages. It's from the National Association of Scholars and Civics Alliance, and this was a press release from our own South Dakota Department of Education. Just a quote from that report. These standards they're proposing, the current proposed standards that we're considering, are among the best in the nation. They are an extraordinary improvement over the draft standard issued on August 5th, 2021, which is what the lobbyists want to default back to, which would have inflicted politicized, content-poor social studies education on South Dakota students. So I invite you to read that report. Maybe Shirley can run off some more copies. I appreciate that. And then also, I do have enough copies of this. It's from the, let's see, I got the wrong page here. It was also from the South Dakota State Department of Education website on their press releases. And it is a letter from quite a few very well-regarded scholars and academicians. Boy, I can't talk tonight. Anyway, those smart guys, the thought leaders. And what they are saying is that content knowledge is essential to literacy. You can't have a literate student without them having knowledge, not just skills, but knowledge. For decades, content knowledge has been de-emphasized, particularly in elementary social studies. The result has been particularly harmful to underprivileged children who are more dependent on their formal schooling for knowledge acquisition. So kids are not going to get this from TV. They're not going to get this from their phones. So we have to educate them. And knowledge is that's the business we're in.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
time. Next speaker, Garrett Pfeiffer. Please, is that your
Yeah.
last name? Okay,
You
I
got
got that right.
I guess I didn't hear it fully, but Pfeiffer,
ahead.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'll make it brief. I would start by saying I'm pretty naive, generally speaking, but specifically on this topic, probably. And I understand that large organizations like entire school districts probably have some redundancies. But on the reduction in force, I don't remember what item number that is. One thing that I hope is carefully considered, and again, it might make a ton of sense to redistribute duties and to consolidate some things that were sort of redundant. But I hope the messaging to teachers, because overwhelmingly, and I've only talked to probably a half dozen teachers, but I've heard of others through them. And what I keep hearing is, whether it's a perception or a reality, lack of support. And that can be a building issue, a colleague issue, a system issue. I'm not here to figure that part out, but I just hope there's careful consideration that the message doesn't become that this is going to lead to more lack of support. If other folks are sort of taking on more duties as these are redistributed, that could certainly, the perception could be that. And more importantly, the reality could be that. And so I hope there's measures or thought in place, and I'm sure there are, but I hope there are measures to kind of consider that teachers might look at this as even less support for them in the classroom, because ultimately now the people they might have relied on are doing other things and absorbing those duties. And so I understand fiscally and maybe from an efficiency standpoint, it makes a ton of sense, but I hope that can maybe be addressed as well, if not only for perception, but also reality, hopefully, so that they don't have extra burden from something like that that might be otherwise necessary. So again, I would come back to, I'm probably naive on that, and maybe that doesn't apply, but maybe I'm trying to speak for the teachers I have talked to. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next speaker, Tanchi Weaver.
Much shorter than the last speaker. Good evening, board. I want to visit with you a little bit. I visited with some of you already about due process. And I'm just going to go back to the resolution that was passed last meeting. As some of you know, I did have a problem with the way that was done. It was not properly noticed, in my opinion, to the public, so that the public had an opportunity to speak on it. But I do believe you're probably a gnat's eyelash on the side of legality there. So that's not the issue. But what the issue is due process. And Mrs. Thompson touched on it. The folks that are against the proposed standards are very happy. And why wouldn't they be? They've gotten what they wanted, and you've signed a resolution, and that resolution was made with only one side of the issue. So I encourage you, and I know that it is probably your intention, to have another study session where the proponent side of the standards can be fully explained and discussed and given proper due process. This is an important issue. I believe that our teachers are capable of doing whatever is decided. Maybe I believe they're more capable than they do, but it is the fact that many people are using very similar standards and to great success. So it is only fair to hear both sides of this issue. And I realize there's nothing you can do at this time about the resolution that's already been signed, but there is one more meeting. And I would say to you that, a lot of people feel that they are just railroaded already, and they're not going to come forward and speak because they, first of all, don't want to be made the butt of a joke, or they just don't want to be made to feel that their side of an issue is not legitimate. And there are many, many people who do not feel that these standards are bad, or that they're impossible, or that they're inappropriate. So I look forward to the next study session where these things are explored. And I encourage you to give adequate notice so that people can plan to come. So thank you. I appreciate the work you do and have a good evening. Drive home safe.
Thank you. And last speaker, Heather Baxter.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much for serving the community and your hard work. I know trying to keep every concerned community member is probably a very daunting task. The resolution that was written live on the meeting on February 7th beckons whether it was ethically or legitimately done, but I digress. The resolution was written in opposition for steps of adoption in the Rapid City School District and to make a statement to the standards forum that was coming up on February 10th. The paragraph was filled with postulations and fallacies of presumption. I feel this letter did not truly relate to the whole community, yet the whole community was represented only by how the board felt at the moment. As a refresher, number 5 of the memo says current social studies materials used in the schools do not align with proposed social studies standards, making their implementation complex and the transition between the 2 sets of standards difficult for students, teachers, parents, and guardians. In my opinion, this was a massive inference that all students, all teachers, and all parents and guardians feel this way. I felt that was not accurate, and I didn't like being included without permission. I would prefer if the public was allowed to weigh in. As a community member and an involved parent, I like to hear from both sides before being generalized in a memo saying that the implementation would be difficult. I have spoken with many students and teachers who have said anytime there is change in the curriculum, there's always an adjustment period. To me, that sounds like life as we all know it. With our current low test scores and deficient levels in almost all subjects in the Rapid City school system, it seems like we do have a serious problem with current education standards. I feel if you're honest with yourself, you can admit that becoming anything great in this world takes much effort. Nothing comes easy and nothing is free. To be successful, a person must memorize, take many tests, push oneself, choose to continuously educate themselves, and be able to easily adapt to multiple scopes and requirements of every job they work. Please allow people who develop the standards to be able to come and give the details of the standards so we have a opportunity to hear from both sides since we've only heard the opposition side. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are moving on to the board response to the open forum topics. Do I have any hands up? Bishop Carr.
I want to address 2 items. In the questioning about the search for the superintendent. The board is working on that process. You probably won't get as much details about that process as you would like. Part of it's confidentiality, and you're talking about people. And so you might not get that, but we are working on the process, and you'll hear something, I think, in a couple of weeks. The study session, I think it is unfortunate that my understanding for me as a board member is study sessions are informational times where different groups give information to me as a board. And so I've been educated that whatever position is presented to me, they are not responsible for giving or making sure that there's an opposing position. So I've taken on that responsibility myself. If someone is presenting information to me, I will ask, are there other counter opinions? Or even if I know, I will ask for that to happen. Because I do believe that both sides of whatever issue it is should have an opportunity to present. That's it. Thank you, Madam President.
Sure. Jim Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President. So in reference to the study session, I didn't take it, it was negative. But I also will tell you that this topic has been up for a long time. And to think that I make my decision at a study session, you're wrong. I have had a lot of emails from a lot of people that I've known from decades that work in this school district and across the state. to jump to the conclusion that only at a study session, that's the only time we open our mind, I will tell you, you're misinformed. I took the time to ask people that I trust, and I found out a whole lot of it. And to me, the resolution did exactly why I said yes. We're asking the state to relook at it. Nobody's saying we're asking to get rid of it. We're asking the state to relook at it and reconvene some committees so that we can have it better. And that came from many, many people across the state. So I took that information and I watched the board do something that totally delighted me. They worked as a team to come up with a resolution, and it was brought forward. I will tell you that if we're not doing that, we're not doing our job. So if you think that just one study session and we got to go pros and cons for each one, I'm not going to support that. Bring your study session to us. We take all the other information we get, and that's where we are. So thank you for your time. But there's a lot more to this than just a study session. Thank you, Madam President.
I wasn't really going to say anything because you addressed the superintendent part. But I would say that since we did do that resolution, I have noticed that there is more information to find out, which I am doing right now. In the meantime, until the next hearing, I think there is some, the resolution didn't say exactly, as one of the commenters said, what other parents are actually for these standards. And in listening to some of the hearings now, there's some really good info that I think everybody really should be listening to those comments, especially us board members. Anyway, I will be continuing research on it, just for the public to know, for my own personal, making sure that I did make the right vote. All right, no other hands. So we're moving on to the next student representative reports. That was really loud. Okay, so Laura Jensen from Central High School, you are up, and I believe you're on Zoom.
Yeah, hello, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, board and all that are in attendance today. My name is Laura Jensen, and I am your student representative from Central. Our school has had an eventful month, and I am glad to be reporting on it. Since I was absent last time for my wisdom teeth removal, I have had quite a lot to bring to you today. Last Wednesday was solo and ensemble for band, choir, and orchestra. Our musicians showed off and all of they were capable and did a great job. Our honors choir even received a perfect score of 30 out of 30. So I would like to congratulate the singers choir group and our choir directors. Our state one acts group returned home with their 19th Superior in a row. We are so proud of our theatrical and technical directors, Joey Lohr and Justin Speck, and all of their students that helped along the way. Additionally, auditions for Frozen were held last week, and the cast and crew found out their positions today. I'm excited to be a part of the Broadway musical Frozen, and I cannot wait for everyone to come and watch it later this spring. Central Student Council put together their second pep assembly last Friday, and it went swimmingly. After a week of dress-up days for Valentine's Day week, it was a great way to end it. Winter and spring athletes and club members were recognized. Then select students got to join their teachers to shoot their hearts out and win a prize. We even had a runway walk-off to see who has the best modeling skills. Overall, it was a fun experience for all in attendance, and it really boosted the school spirit. RCAS is giving back a lot this month. With that, ROTC is hosting the next Vitalent Blood Drive on Friday, February 24th, between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. in the wrestling room. Last week was our Whiteout Cancer Games, where we raised money by selling t-shirts in support of the husband of the freshman special education teacher, Andy Harsager, who was recently diagnosed with cancer. Both seasons and Central played hard in support of cancer at both games. During those games, our guys team unfortunately lost, However, the girls' team came out on top with a final score of 56-50. Central's activities have been busier than ever recently. Central High School's speech and debate had a great tournament in Gillette, where the whole team took home first place in their division. So congrats goes out to all that participate in that event. This Thursday and Friday will be state wrestling. Central had 13 of the wrestlers qualify at regionals, and they will be attending this competition, and we wish them all the best of luck this week. In even more exciting news, Aaliyah Jones recently broke a school record in a game against Yankton. We are very proud of this junior who managed to score 38 points in one game. And that is all I have today, and I'm glad to be back.
Thank you. All right, moving on to conflict of interest, because I want to make sure we don't have Kevin Big Crow on.
His speakers are not working.
Oh, is that what you were, okay, all right, so yeah, conflict of interest and none have been turned in. So we are on to the approval of the consent agenda. Does anyone want anything pulled?
President Thomas, can we please pull P, the MOU with WDT?
Yes. Anything else?
Could we pull C? I also have some questions about what is actually changing there.
Okay. C. P, okay, with C and P pulled, do I have a first and second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Kate Thomas,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Clay,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and Michael.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, C has been pulled. I need a motion in a second. And discussion. What was your question?
I guess just general question is it just like stuff around the edges and filling in gaps mostly? Is that what it is? And then there was one of them that looked like it was way out in the middle of its own thing. What's up with that?
Great question. Very quickly, I will recap this. So obviously, as you all are all aware, about a year ago, the district worked through the redistricting process, had the maps finalized, approved by the board. It came to our attention about a month ago that there was some discrepancies discovered, and it actually came through the county folks. And so I've learned a lot in that 1 month period. We, with all due respect, had difficulty communicating with the demographer that the district had hired through that process. So I actually started talking with the Rapid City GIS office. They have been tremendously helpful throughout this process. A woman called Laura Abernathy in particular has helped through this process, and they've been really great. What I've learned about that in that time period is that when redistricting happens, the demographers follow census boundary lines, okay? What we've discovered is that census boundary lines do not always match up with property lines. And so throughout this process of double checking and going back through this information, these areas were discovered in which there were very, very minor gaps and or changes to these specific areas. So if you look at any of the maps, I'll just, this one in particular. So area 6, the shaded area, the red shaded area is what the current boundary is. The line running next to it, the solid line, is the correction for that area. And essentially it's just a very, very small gap in which the census line does not match up with the property line. The vast majority of these corrections do not affect any residents of those areas. As a matter of fact, I believe I said less than 100 in the action item. I think we've narrowed that down to 21 total across all areas. Throughout this process, again, have worked with Rapid City GIS office, obviously kept our legal counsel involved, who also consulted with Sarah Frankenstein, the attorney who helped us during the redistricting process. These are very, very minor changes. the impact to populations in any of those areas does not make any percentage difference in terms of the population and or the specific identification of those areas. And so these are not things that we have to have multiple reviews of or any of those things. These are adjustments that the board can make. The one area in particular I will add, Mr. Berkland, I believe you're talking about this diamond area in area 6. Okay. So this is a bizarre thing. No one can explain this, why exactly this is. However, this is a detached area in which there is not a contiguous boundary line in this area. I should also add, talked extensively with representatives from both Meade School District and Douglas. Everyone agrees, including Meade School District, including Meade County Auditor's Office, including Rapid City GIS, that this tiny diamond area for whatever reason is and has been traditionally inside of Rapid City area schools. The probably best explanation is that at some point in history, there was a minor boundary change in which this area got pulled into Rapid City area school district for some reason, but obviously we don't have thousands of hours to do that research. And so everyone agreed that this was the correct way to handle this particular situation. But again, the vast majority of these areas, as you review them, are really simply pulling these lines back and forth to ensure that the census lines match up with the property lines. So very minor corrections overall, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mrs. Swaggart?
Thank you, President Thomas. Mr. Sassy, correct me if I'm wrong, when you and I discussed this,
Mhm.
you said that none of these changes impacted voting last June. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. I think that's important to point out that we had this done last spring. It was brought to our attention that this was wrong, but luckily the areas we had voting in last summer are not impacted by any of these changes. So I think it's important that our community knows that.
Yes, I think so too. And you said it was only basically 20.
Right. Even if any of these areas were involved, it would not have made a material difference to the outcome of any votes because the population impacted in these changes is so small.
Right. Okay, Bishop Carr?
Thank you, Madam President. Please correct my understanding if I'm wrong, but these boundary lines are done every 10 years. You can do it sooner, but every 10 years. And the last time we did it, it was missed. And so we basically had a few months to try to get the boundary lines right. And so there's been a commitment by the board to, after this process, take our due diligence and time and have a redistricting. I think that's.
Yes.
Yes.
I believe Shirley's put it on
Yeah.
board and the future board's calendar for every 3 years or so.
I think that's a really excellent point, Bishop Carr. And furthermore, and you've made this point as well, given the way that our community is changing, given the way the population is shifting in some of the major areas that we see growth and development, it would behoove us to be looking at that process, obviously more than every 10 years, to make sure the representation is happening the way it needs to, and that if there are changes that are necessary, that we're doing that in a timely manner. So yes, sir.
All right. Roll call.
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb. Yes. Jim.
Yes.
Clay,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, moving on to P, Western Dakota Technical College trustees. I need a motion.
So moved.
President Thomas,
Go
I
ahead.
think we're gonna have to address this. I said the letter P, I recognize that. I spoke though about the MOU, which is letter R. That's what I wanted to pull. I misspoke.
Would you like to still discuss it?
The trustees.
Yes, we've already
Yep.
voted on it, so.
I would like to say that Dr. Bowman
Okay.
brought to us a list of trustees. If you recall from a couple of meetings ago, we discussed the
Right.
fact that Rapid City Area Schools and WDT, when they separated, Rapid City Area Schools picked selections for the board of WDT that first time. And then the state selected somebody and WDT selected. And now it's our turn again, because the terms of the
Right.
trustees that we picked is up. We did allow WDT to make that selection and bring forth their list of names because it is in fact their board moving forward. So I do ask that the board support this list that was brought forward unless there's any further discussion.
Oh. All right, any other discussion from board members? Okay, do we want to wait 1 second? No. All right, roll call.
Kate,
No.
Deb? Jim,
Yes.
Clay,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
motion passes 5-1.
All right, going on and moving.
Can we do anything about R that I misspoke on or move forward? Okay.
No, we've got to move
Thank
forward
you.
because we already.
That's
voted
right.
on
It hasn't been signed, so it will be brought back. WTT hasn't signed it,
Oh,
so
got you.
that's what
Okay,
I wanted to speak to.
okay. Item 12, board information, fiscal year budget update, Coy Sassy.
Thank you, President Thomas. May I share my screen, please, Shirley? Mhm. Thank you, ma'am. So board, I wanted to very briefly give you an update on the fiscal year 24 budget preparation up to this point. I promised President Thomas prior to the meeting that I would stay away from the common rabbit holes that I get into. So if I talk about something and you would like to discuss it more, please feel free to reach out to me and I will put you to sleep with any of those subjects. So obviously, at this point in the year, we are still fairly early into the budget process. So a few things I want to talk you through. One, just some brief budget updates, especially on the revenue side for the district and what's happening with some of our revenue sources. Talk a little bit about some of the priorities that have been discussed up to this point in the fiscal committee of the board. And then talk through some negotiations information. And I am not going to make a recommendation, but I am going to talk about the process that leads up to a negotiations recommendation to the board in terms of an allotment to bring to negotiations. So I'd like to say thank you to the finance committee of the board. They've been really committed to our meetings. They've given great feedback, had a lot of great conversation. And so you'll hear me throughout this update, reference a lot of the different topics that we've talked about in finance committee. And so I don't mean to speak for those folks, but these were oftentimes some of the thoughts that came out through that committee. So at this point in the budget process, there are really three primary areas that I am focused on. First being the revenue projections, really digging into major revenue sources and trying to understand what those are going to look like as we move into next year. Expenditure projections, which include building out negotiation scenarios to understand how ranges of compensation increases are impacting the budget. And then really trying to come at this point to solidifying a negotiations allotment recommendation to the board. So first I want to talk through some of the revenue projections. Of course, as you all are aware, there are really two key revenue sources to the district. And that is the local effort or property tax revenue, and then of course the state aid revenue. So first, I want to touch on local effort a bit. Local effort provides significant funding to the district's three major funds: the general fund, capital outlay fund, and special education fund. District has seen total property valuation growth near or over 5% since 2016. So our property valuation in this city has grown significantly and consistently over time. However, in 2023, the district's valuation grew by 18.18%. That is a massive year-over-year growth. And obviously, as that valuation grows, it drives new revenue to the district. Now, in almost every sense, that sounds like a great thing. And this is a rabbit hole I will avoid, but I will tell you that as we have some of this discussion, you will see that does have some negative impacts on the district as well. So just to give you an idea of what that is going to do to the revenue source, district's general fund local effort projection increases 5.5 million moving into next fiscal year, from 42 million in the current fiscal year to 47.5 million in fiscal year 24. So we see really rapid growth in that particular revenue source. On the state aid side, this is a much trickier projection at this point in the year because it requires multiple assumptions about several variables of the state aid formula. You're gonna have to excuse me for 1 second. I believe that I made changes to my slide deck, and now I think I must be using an old slide deck. This is becoming a habit for me, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize.
It's only the second time.
Yeah.
21 times, right, for habit?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is your rabbit hole number one.
I'm gonna very quickly stop share and then I'll bring it back so I can. Okay. I promise you all, I will not do that again. Okay. We're back. Okay. So as we've discussed in the past, there are really four major variables that determine state aid need. The first and primary being student enrollment. We've talked a lot about enrollment in the past few years. We've had some interesting trends in enrollment fluctuations. After discussion, we chose to move forward with essentially a flat enrollment estimate of 12,650 AD or average daily membership. Of course, could be over, could be under, but we felt at this point in time that was the best route forward was to use a flat estimate. The second major variable being the target teacher salary. And this is the single variable that causes the most amount of confusion and headache, and I think at times difficulty in terms of discussing what is actually happening with state aid. So this is set forth by the legislature and often referred to as the increase to state aid. So you will hear either in the governor's budget address or coming down from the legislature that they are increasing state aid by 5%. And that is actually, or whatever the figure is, and that is actually not accurate. What is happening is they are increasing the target teacher salary of that formula by 5%. Now, Changes to any of these other four variables could mean that a district could end up with more than 5% or less than 5%. So it really causes a lot of confusion when that is the message, because I think what automatically jumps to someone's mind is if we took our state aid this year times 5%, that would be the state aid amount for next year. And again, that is not what's happening. What is happening is an increase to this one variable in the formula. So at this point in the year, what I will typically do is project off of the governor's budget recommendation. That is usually a fairly safe bet. That currently is at 5%. Now there's been discussion and we've gotten some feedback from lobbyists that they're going after a higher percentage, that they feel like they could land anywhere between 5 and 8%. But currently, I think the most appropriate course of action is to use what the governor has recommended. Third being what they call an overhead factor, which is essentially a percentage multiplier for overhead costs. And then lastly, and what has greatly impacted our district over the last several years, is the removal of local efforts. So once this need figure is determined throughout this formula, the local effort is removed from that need. So it's very important to keep in mind that the district has had this very rapid valuation increase, especially over the last year, and that will dramatically impact what happens to state aid. So I apologize. This is probably difficult for you to read. It looks much smaller there than it does. It did in my slide deck. But these are 3 different snapshots of projections of state aid for next year. And very quickly, I won't go down the rabbit hole because I could, but I'm using essentially a common set of variables outside of the target teacher salary increase. So using a 12,650 enrollment estimate number, the first example here outlined in red is with a 3% target teacher salary increase. And as you can see, and again, I won't go down the rabbit hole right now, the total general state aid that we would project with those variables is $38.1 million. When you compare that to the current year's estimate of $41.9 million, the district would actually lose about $3.8 million in state aid moving into next year. That's under a 3% target teacher salary. The next example outlined in orange is a 5% target teacher salary increase. So that is currently what the governor has recommended. You'll see here that total state aid projection at a 5% target teacher salary increase is $40.3 million. Again, comparing that to the current fiscal year, we would still be about 1.6 million under where we are currently projected. So even under a 5%, the district is losing state aid funds. It isn't until we get up to an 8% target teacher salary increase that we actually see that number come out of the red and into the black by about $1 million at just over 43 million. So that gives you an idea in a range of how those particular increases would impact the district. And I think that's really, really important as we look at the overall picture. I tell people all the time, I think we tend to get tunnel vision and hyper focused on one area of the budget or another. And obviously my job is to zoom out from that and look at it as a whole and present you with what's happening as a whole budget. But this is certainly a very important part of that perspective. So this is just off of my working documents I put together to essentially compare the 24 projection to the current year projection. So on the very left-hand side, you see fiscal year 23 budgeted revenue. In the middle, the fiscal year 24 revenue projection, any change in any notes I have. So again, as we discussed, the local effort or the property tax on the first line is really the major mover moving into next year at about $5.5 million increase. Which is about a 12.7% increase. So again, major increase in that area. County is always a guessing game. That's essentially deferred taxes from TIF and TID developments So we never really know what's going to happen with that. We kind of budget the same line item every year and see what happens. The total state sources, again, decreasing by about 893,000. Again, that's under 5% target teacher salary increase. And then federal, again, difficult to know at this point in time because we don't have any of the allocations, but looking at it historically, we can almost always count on about a 2% increase in federal sources. So total revenue projected to increase at about a $4.9 million mark. Driven again entirely by the local effort of the district. I find this very interesting and I wanted to make a point of it. So I outlined this in red that if you break down those different sources as a percentage of the overall revenue, you see local revenue is at about 46% of the overall general fund revenue budget. State at 40 and then Fed at about 14%. Historically, the breakdown between local and state has been much more even. In what we see, again, because of the unique factors impacting our district, is that because of the way that the state aid formula is structured, just to be frank, negative impact it has had on our district, the local sources or local effort continue to take a larger portion of the general fund revenue brunt. So I think that's an interesting trend and really something that we should keep an eye on as we move into the future. Just very quickly want to talk about some of the budget priorities discussed by the Finance Committee for next fiscal year. If you reflect back to the board retreat this fall in the discussion there were really two priorities that rose to the top of that conversation. First being salaries and compensation of district employees, and then the second being student behavior and the development of a behavioral program. And then 2B, I believe was really the CTE side of that. So talking through the behavioral program, there are obviously a lot of moving pieces with getting that program up and moving, really aggressive timeline to get that implemented into next year. We've had some conversation about that. Obviously, it's going to require some building modifications at where it lands in terms of a home for that program. Those will fall into capital outlay. I think really to me, when I look at it from a budgetary perspective, probably the bigger concern is the personnel plan side and what exactly that will look like. We've had some discussions, still awaiting a finalized plan. However, up to this point, it's been discussed that that program would not require new positions and essentially could be staffed internally. Obviously, if that were to change, it would change the overall picture of the budget and recommendations for compensation movements. Just very quickly, talking about negotiations allotment, which obviously links into the number one priority of compensation for employees. What I really focus on throughout this process is looking at different compensation ranges and how that impacts the general fund and ultimately secondarily the capital outlay fund due to some of the dependence on capital outlay flexibility over the year. I think it's an important reminder in these discussions that to me, this is sort of a two-part conversation. Part one being, again, talking about what we feel the district can digest in terms of an overall increase to the general fund. So we are not trying to necessarily zero in on negotiation priorities, but really to identify an overall figure that we feel comfortable in bringing to the full board and recommending for use in negotiations. Talked about this at length throughout Finance Committee meetings. And the thoughts were to try to hit a sweet spot or a level at which compensation could be increased up to a balanced general fund budget, which allows the district to address salaries, obviously, but at the same time being sensitive to the really extensive needs of the capital outlay fund. And again, I always like to keep in mind that doesn't include new money for other priorities. So if there is new money injection or new money conversations between now and that point, obviously that's going to impact what that recommendation looks like. So I think that I've used this analogy many times. The budget process is like tuning an AM radio. It's just continually tweaking and tweaking and tweaking until you get locked into a clearer picture. And we're still doing that. Obviously, we're still early in the process. There are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things that still have to be determined. But I think that the really hard budget work that has been done over the past several years in terms of really understanding how we move pieces of the budget, doing some hard work and making some sacrifices around budget modifications has really put the budget into a better place as we move into FY24. Of course, having state aid come in at a higher percentage than 5% to the target teacher salary would really help our situation. But I do feel better. I think we're in a better place as we move into next fiscal year, and we'll be able to do some good things. So hopefully that was quick, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have, board.
Any board members have questions? Yes, Michael Berkelin.
Oh, I just had one quick question. Am I accurate in my thinking that because our local effort went up, the state is giving us less? Is it kind of like a great job, you guys are doing it, so we're not going to help you kind of see?
Careful.
Yeah.
Here's my response to that, Mr. Berkelin. I would say that the way that the formula is structured, if you don't have the other variables in the formula moving in a positive direction, it has a very negative impact. Also, the idea that our local effort is probably at a place where I don't believe that any other district in the state has a similar situation, even a Sioux Falls or any other fast growing area. Our growth has been so aggressive and so rapid that has made all of those factors even more negative for the district. So what the district really needs for a positive outcome is for one of two major variables to change, and that would be an increase in enrollment, a significant increase in enrollment, or that target teacher salary to increase at a rate that would get us into the black and out of the red. So essentially landing somewhere in the 7 to 8% range. If total need doesn't grow, and again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I think that need is a misnomer in that formula, because okay, I'll stop there. I believe it's a misnomer. Then it is very difficult to capitalize on the resources that we are receiving through the property tax. And in my opinion, the rapid growth of property tax is an indication of what's happening in our community. And because we are not allowed to capture that full growth and see our revenue increase the way we should, in my opinion, it really hobbles us from being able to react to what's going on in our community, whether that is building new buildings, whether that is staying competitive in the wage market with all of our competitors here locally or regionally. It really makes it difficult for our school district to be able to do that. So I testified in front of the Senate Ed Committee. I think we had a great response to that, but what I'm learning is it's difficult to effectuate change at that level. And so as we move into next year, I have some strategies and some thoughts on things we can do differently, but this really needs to be addressed, and the formula really needs to be addressed, because it is really hurting not only our district, but districts around the state, in my opinion. So.
I think that earlier in the year you showed, and maybe to the Senate Ed too, kind of a graph, a picture of a cup. That cup never gets full, or it's full, that's it. Now in that cup, the cup itself doesn't grow. So you have your state aid and you have your local aid. When your local aid goes up, your state aid goes down. What he's saying is we don't always capture that local aid. So the state sees and thinks we are getting more, so we get less. That's the formula from the state. But we don't capture all that local.
Yeah, essentially, that's a great explanation. Essentially, if you think of this district resources as a cup, in the revenue being poured into this cup, unless the size of that cup is growing or the need of the district is growing, that overall, the overall size of the cup is capped. So the growth of a local effort is actually putting pressure downward on state aid, and state aid, as we saw, as a total reflection in revenue, is going down, while local effort or our property tax continues to take a larger brunt of the increase. So I think it's fair to say that in our district's particular situation, our taxpayers are taking a larger brunt of funding education than a lot of districts around the state. And it's because that cup size is not growing. Now, some of those factors are unique to our district, but I still maintain the idea that the funding formula is not helpful to us and to a lot of districts.
Mrs. Swigert.
President Thomas, I would like to point out that when this state aid formula was developed, it was literally developed to try to get school districts to consolidate and close and grow together. But actually, it had the exact opposite effect because it allowed those districts to gain more state aid. So the state actually, in essence, was bailing them out. I think where it hurts us is that when the governor or the state legislature gives us an increase of 5% to the target teacher salary, that doesn't impact our local effort. It only impacts the state aid formula. So the 5% increase that we should be getting is actually getting smaller because it's impacting the state aid formula, but it's not impacting the local effort.
Okay.
And so the more local effort we have, the less we reap benefits from any state increase, which ultimately has a very negative effect on where we can go financially in our district.
Correct. All right, any other questions for Coy? All right. Great job. I don't think there were any rabbit holes that I could see.
Try to avoid if I could.
You need a ladder?
All right, on to information item project Lead the Way Engineering Grant, Dr. Bruckner.
Dr. Bruckner, are you on?
I see you.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was muted. So
Thank you.
the project,
Dr. Bruckner, would you like to address this?
yes, I'm happy to. The Project Lead the Way Engineering Grant is a grant that we would like to apply for in order to help fund new curriculum for our Introduction to Engineering course. As you recall, we modified our academy model this past fall in collaboration with building administration. And this is one of the recommendations that came out of it, is to revamp that curriculum. Project Lead the Way is a career-connected, hands-on experimental learning. So it's very engaging for students. And so this informational item is simply to request the board's permission to pursue this grant. It would provide 3 years of funding, including teacher training at each of our 2 buildings for, like I said, 3 years. So any questions?
Yeah, Jamie Clapham.
What grade levels would this affect? Would it be all 4 of their high school grade levels or only upper levels or?
This course is specifically for 10th grade, but 11th and 12th could also take it. So this would be the introduction course at the 10th grade level primarily.
And then I have one more question of, so like it says they're approved monthly. So when I've just had a lot of parents feedback of like making their schedules and student schedules and having time, like how long would it take for us to like have this in the schedule catalog for students to actually be able to choose it as a course?
So we already offer the Introduction to Engineering course, and so that already is an option students can select. This is simply a curriculum change.
Thank you very much.
Can I weigh in here, Madam President?
Yes, please.
Just an FYI, so the intro to engineering course has been with us for, next year will be year 3. There are 2 sections at Stevens. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a teacher at Central this year for the course. So we've posted that position and we hope to get somebody on board. But the course has been in there. This will be year 3. And as Dr. Bruckner said, it's just a curriculum update. We've also been fortunate enough to have Project Lead the Way fund our biomedical courses that we've had for quite some time in the district here. So just a tidbit of information there.
Thank you very much.
All right, with no other questions, moving on to information, the proposal online program purchase for use in our district-wide special education classrooms. Dr. Hafer.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Hafer with Special Services and Todd Christensen are here. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you, Board and President Thomas, for having us, and thank you for all you do. I didn't realize what week it was, so thank you. The reason Mr. Christensen is here is because he oversees all of our district classrooms. And so he's the one who brought IXL forward, and we're really excited about this. So I'm going to have him answer any questions for this.
Good evening, everybody. So there was a short description, I think, in the agenda about what IXL is. Actually, we've used it in some real small pockets in the district, more just individual classroom and student. But the more we used it, we really saw the benefit of it. And you have that information. If you want to, too, you can go to www.ixl.com and you can just kind of see what the dashboard looks like. The most exciting thing about, I think, IXL is the individualization it gives for our students. Many of our district room teachers are working with 3 grade levels, some even more. So we have special education teachers that are planning instruction and curriculum for students in K through 2. So they're providing that instruction for 3 grade levels. And you can see IXL looks at math, ELA, science, social studies. One of the great things about it too is it directly links to South Dakota content standards. It has ACT prep, all of those things. So we've been piloting this year. Already we have 308 students accessing IXL, 59 teachers using it in their classrooms in 22 buildings. So pretty much every building in the district. We're able to get diagnostics and assessment data on those students in real time. How they're progressing through the curriculum, the standards in those different subject areas. So any questions? Just one more thing, I guess. I think the people, I've been doing this a long time. I'm getting old, you know. And I don't get excited about a lot of things. You see a lot of intervention models, you see a lot of curriculums, you see a lot of things come and go. And this is something I'm really excited about. Our teachers are really excited about it. Even some of our real difficult, tough to reach students with disabilities saw more work in a week with IXL than they did in months. They can print out certificates of completion. They take them home to their parents. It's been really fun to see kids and how proud they are to work in this program and get these things done.
Did you have a question?
It's just really.
Go ahead.
Do non-special education teachers outside of the classroom need to interact with IXL much or no?
No, we're right now, actually there's IXL could be for all students, but right now we're just looking at the SPED students. And we're really just implementing in what we would call our behavior skills and structured academic programs. A lot of those students spend a good part of their day in those classrooms and programs. So they're working on that. So no, right now it's just IEP students.
Any other questions? Mr. Brooklyn?
I have a quick kind of process question, I guess. Will this go through like instructional council and then to us? Is that how this works, or will we skip instructional council? I don't, because it's sort of a curriculum, but also not. So I didn't know how any of that worked.
It really bases off of the curriculum that we already have in the standards, so it's kind of an extension. And usually in the world of special education, we're looking to do supports, and so it's going to combine it back and support what we're already doing in the classroom. But we sure can bring it to instructional council if you'd like us to.
I mean, I'm good. I was just curious about how that goes, because I have used it before. So I know what it's like, but I can also see where others might want to check it out before we look at it. But like you said, it's free and anyone can go to IXL.com.
The only thing I can say about that is that since IXL is so great, and if we move it on into other classrooms, then special education can't pay the price tag for it.
Right.
And so right now, when it's underneath us, then we can otherwise. That's where that goes.
Perfect.
Mr. Christensen, if you are so excited about this, don't you think you should stay another year?
Yes.
I think that's been on a board agenda.
All those in favor?
Thanks, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the information item reduction in force.
Thank you, President Thomas. As the agenda said, a reduction in force occurred at Rapid City Education Center. The positions of Director of College and Career Readiness and the Director of Facilities were affected by the district's decision to conduct a RIF. The district evaluated all of the existing departments and determined 2 of the newest director positions needed to be consolidated and the delegation of duties redistributed. This was in the interest of physical responsibility and stewardship with district resources. The district has been evaluating positions and responsibilities within the district over several months. Ultimately, the district determined that the two of the newest director positions, Director of College and Career Readiness and the Director of Facilities, could be reduced and the responsibilities of each of those positions redistributed and restructured within the organization. The district has temporarily assigned responsibilities and will continue to work on permanent transfer of those responsibilities consistent with the restructured organizational chart that is being considered by the Board of Education. Thank you.
Any comments from board members or questions? Go ahead.
I just want to say that I agree with these 2 reductions in force. And I want to address some of the emails, or one email that I got. And it's with any decision that I make or support, it's always with the what's best for the district in mind. And so I just wanted to make sure that people understand that this decision, or my support of this decision, is for the best. There was a member of our church, and seems like they did everything, and they had decided to move. And I just thought to myself, oh my Lord, how is the church gonna make it without these two individuals? But as you see, the church made it. And so with any organization, especially organization this size, if I leave, this district is just gonna keep on going. If Mr. Berkland leaves, y'all just gonna roll over us and just keep on going. So the district will be, no matter whether we lose 1 or 2 people, the district is gonna be in good shape and keep on going. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Any other comments? I would just say, to piggyback on that, I agree that this administration looked well at these 2 positions. And if you have been following the school board for a while, these 2 positions are back in a place actually that were not very long ago, right back where they need to be. And I have full trust in the departments that are taking the duties back. And that it was not a small decision, but I think more of a decision from the administration and our support that says we are trying to be more organized, fiscally responsible, plus still running the show. They are definitely still doing that. All the departments are doing that. And I hope that the public would have trust in that as well. And that is the end of the information. So now we're on to the superintendent report. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. In the last couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to Zoom with the new Secretary of Education, Dr. Graves. He joined the Department of Education from Mitchell, South Dakota. He was their superintendent for 22 years. So it is very nice to have somebody in that position who comes from a larger school district in South Dakota and has serious, strong connections to many superintendents throughout the state. So I look forward to working with him. I had a great meeting with the Student Voice Forum. That is an amazing group of young people in our district. I wish it would get bigger. It's one of my favorite meetings I have. Mrs. Kiner runs that program, and she also helps with the youth council at the Youth City Council and a lot of other youth activities. It is just empowering to sit in on that Student Voice Forum and listen to what the students have going on. This spring, they're going to have Recycle Wars again. And last year, it is quite an undertaking to do the Recycle Wars because they literally count each piece of recycled material, and the school with the most pieces donated or recycled gets the award. And last year, Rapid City High School, the smallest high school, won the Recycle Wars. So we'll see what happens this year. We also began interviewing candidates for the in-house legal counsel position. That is another fiscally responsible action that we're looking at, the cost that we are paying to legal firms and hoping to significantly reduce that cost by pulling a representative into the district. So I'll have more information coming forward on that shortly. I met with the Rapid City Sports Commission and had a really interesting talk about the studies and the work they're doing moving forward. And it's nice to be partnered with some enthusiastic interest about how to move the sports forward in Rapid City area. I attended a Cracker Barrel at Western Dakota VOTEC. It was another really great time to listen to our legislators, our local legislators, and how they are thinking and feeling about bills that are coming forth. We're a little over halfway through this legislative session, and we'll be wrapping up before we know it, and they make some significant decisions. Ultimately, they will decide our funding, and we are pressing for 8%. They're selling me 6%. The governor said 5%. I'm going to keep pressing. I also met with the Department of Social Services. They are in desperate need of foster families, and they recognize how fantastic the employees are of Rapid City area schools, and they wanted to try to reach out and do some recruiting of our fantastic employees. But I think if you talk to people who foster, that is a significant undertaking, and it is a high need in our community, the number of youth that are in foster care. I met with Imagine Learning, and that is the new parent company of Edgenuity. They have a variety of new, they're growing, and they've bought other companies. They bought Odysseyware, and they're our learning management system, and they are growing and expanding in some really great ways. And it was fantastic to talk to them. We are in the first year of a 3-year contract with them. And one of the things I'm appreciating the most is we do get to reap some of the benefits of what they're doing to expand. They're not holding them back from us and not in saying, well, you can't have these until the next time you pay us. They're providing that now, and that's a pleasant surprise. I met with Brett Garland from the South Dakota School Safety Commission, and he and I will be presenting next Tuesday night at the study session. He has been to 22 of our 23 buildings and done safety evaluations. And we're going to bring forth some things that we've noticed, some things that would be good ways to improve or look at improving, changing safety and security in our district. And that is something that is very valuable and always needs to be a primary concern. I don't know what it is about February, but I have had multiple parents' concerns reach my office so far. And the nice thing is everyone that I've met with, we've been able to come up with an equitable solution for the parent and the school, which keeps them out of the board hearing process. So I'm always happy about that. I did attend the Rush hockey game with the 4th and 5th graders last week. I did not take my earplugs. And I kind of regretted that later because that has to be the loudest Rush game every single season. They were telling me that that was the first time Tulsa had played here. And the game didn't go our way, but not for the lack of enthusiasm of our crowd. Title I principals have started working on their applications. It is that season where the consolidated applications are being written for next school year, which is always really surprising because it feels like we just started second semester. Why are we thinking about 2023-24 school year? But that work is hard work that has to be done now. March 1st, any school entity changes, any decisions about what we're doing forward, moving forward with schools in our district have to be submitted to the state. So we have some hard work to do in the district in the next few days so that we can submit those changes by March 1st. TSI and CSI, those are the schools that were targeted by the state based on our SBAC testings last year. Action plans and the CNA process is due by March 1st, and the DOE, the Department of Education, hopes to have applications out by May or June for the 23-24 school year. They always have high hopes of getting us information early. We'll see. That's all I have to say about that. Title IV, a lot of things are happening with that. You approved that we had a summer science camp grant application process for students. Already, it was a $22,600 scholarships for students to attend the science summer camps. We have $21,100 of that $22,600 spoken for, and we have $1,500 worth on the wait list. So basically, we've spent it all. If we let every student that wants to go. That would include Central High School, Stevens High School, Southwest, and West Middle School, grades 7 through 12. We can go up to $35,000. It was that Northman group. BDL is working on some well-rounded school presentations that will be coming to the board for the March 24th study session, and board leadership presentation March 30th, and also April 11th, well-rounded schools. ESSER, lots of stuff happening with ESSER, that ESSER money, how we agreed to spend it and how we are wrapping up the spending of the ESSER funds is significant. So that impacted different things like the Lakota Immersion Cultural Committee, the work determining how we're going to move forward. We have had those Lakota Immersion positions posted all school year. And we agreed that if we hired, we would get them on staff and have them going for next year. And we still, even though it was posted from last spring, all summer, we couldn't find anybody that met the qualifications the state requires. We still have not hired, even though they've been open all school year with openings. So we are having a conversation about how do we move forward with that program at General Beetle in the future. Summer school, we have the posting for the principal for summer school. Once again, we're going to concentrate on credit recovery for 9th through 12th. We have funding for one more year with our ESSER money. And that is a great opportunity for us to capture exactly what ESSER money was for, to make up for learning loss and help kids catch up. And it's a great way for students who get senioritis and don't quite finish the classes they need to still get to graduate. If they only owe us or only have to make up 1 or less credits, they can still participate in graduation. The Bush Grant, we have a bunch of trainings coming forward. With that, I'm supposed to be in New York. I was supposed to leave tomorrow for the Innovative School Conference in New York City, but being fiscally responsible, we canceled that trip on Monday because we weren't sure that we could get out if the airport would be open on Wednesday. And if we didn't cancel on Monday, we would have been accountable for almost $10,000 in hotel rooms. So that was a tough call to make. Another one of those things where I'm the district, so everybody, including Ty, was waiting for me to make the decision, and I didn't exactly appreciate always having to make that call. School improvement plans. I know that many of the directors and Mr. Talley have been sitting in listening to the school improvement plan presentations for each individual school and are gaining a lot of knowledge about our buildings and future needs that we're going to have moving forward. And I appreciate all the hard work that Mr. Talley is doing on that. Stevens and Central are kind of wrapping up the basketball season. Laura shared that 13 wrestlers from Central qualified for state wrestling. It is this weekend. I'm 100% blaming the storm on the fact that it is state athletic tournament season because that always brings us rough weather. I am told that state wrestling goes on no matter what. So many school districts across the state sent kids today a whole day early so they could guarantee that they get here so they can participate in state wrestling tomorrow or Thursday. That starts. That tournament design has changed over the years, but it's now individual tournament Thursday and Friday and the state dual championships on Saturday. So I encourage people to get out to the monument and watch our wrestlers. Stevens qualified even more wrestlers than Central did. So we have a very good showing in the state wrestling this weekend. Last weekend was speech and debate national qualifiers. We always have a good showing in that. And I'm super proud of our Stevens and Central kids who went to the national or made it to the national qualifiers. This morning, I spoke to the Rushmore Rotary Club, a great, amazing group of individuals. It's always a pleasure to be asked to go speak to them. They do amazing work in the community, but they really go out of their way to sponsor Rapid City High School and have gone far above and beyond. They're super excited. I know Mrs. Gross is working on this as well, but it is the 100th birthday of Rapid City High School this year. And so we want to work on having a community celebration in September. Happy birthday to Rapid City High School. And so if any former Rapid City graduates would like to participate in that process, there'll be a meeting Monday night at 5:30 in the community room at the 4 o'clock at the community room in the public library. And I'm sure not all the work will be done on that one night, so there'll be other opportunities for people to get involved. But we're calling out to Rapid City High School graduates from long ago, if they want to come and participate in that, it is wonderful. I'm always surprised by the number of former yearbooks that get donated every year for Rapid City High School, and we put on display there. Funding, as Coy pointed out, is a huge issue. So we want to pay particular attention to the laws, the bills, and the budgetary considerations that are being done at the state. So once again, pay attention and reach out to your legislators if you are so inclined. I think it's very important. And it's almost March. Next week is March. So we'll be starting negotiation season. Appreciate that is one of the big jobs that board members have, is sitting on those negotiation teams. So another shout out to all the board members for the work that they do, especially this time of year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Mrs. Swigert? Not seeing any hands, so we move on to other. Do any board members have an other? Oh, wow. Bam. Mrs. Clapham.
I just wanted to say one sort of feedback of Mr. Hanson saying I was at all nearly 5 hours of the social studies hearing. I listened to more than 4 or 5 hours of proponents and opponents. So just to emphasize the fact that what we hear in a study session in 1 hour, 90 minutes is by no means the explanation of what we have heard, what we've read, what we've researched. I take it very seriously that my responsibility as a board member is to be an informed board member. So I do not take that responsibility lightly. I want to say it was really cool, like the highlight to Clemson Private Teacher of the Year was like one of the best things of the start of the month. Seeing how excited her kids were. And I would just say all the teachers of the year in the building, you know, pat them on the back. It's so great, you know, she was crying, the kids were crying. It was wonderful to be a part of that. And she is a phenomenal teacher, like many of the teachers we have in the district. And the rush hockey game, I just want to applaud our staff to get 2,000 children into and out of hockey and fed, and all of them back to their buildings, and we didn't lose anyone. Is miraculous. And if you're there to watch principals, parents, it's a phenomenal undertaking. So I just wanted to applaud all of our staff, the rush, Black Energy. It was really cool. And I did remember my earbuds. And I'm very pleased with that, but it's a really great undertaking and a really cool experience for those kids, and just really thank our staff for all that they do in that process.
Shout out to Bobby Schaefbauer, Community Relations Manager. She had a huge part in that rush planning. Very appreciative.
Mr. Brooklyn.
I just had a super quick clarification. I realized during IXL, I said it was free. I didn't want anyone to be like, why are they asking for money then? The free version is like way below the paid version. You get like 5 students, it's terrible to use. That is why they are asking for money. The paid version is much, much better. So just wanted to clarify that in case anyone was like, why do they need $50,000 if it's free? You can check it out for free and see what it's like, but to actually use it, you got to pay for it.
Bishop Carr.
2 weeks ago, I read a statement about racism at one of the schools. I attended a meeting last week with a mother who came out of desperation and frustrating because of, again, racism. I know of a young man who's had grown his hair from the time he was born, and it had reached to the bottom of his back. And he was under so much criticism and ridicule from school that even though it was a cultural significance for him to keep growing his hair, he called his mom. He met with his mom, told his mom that he wanted to cut it, and his mom, because of the pain that she saw, had him cut his hair. And so I mentioned that because I don't know if there's any vehicles of sensitivity training or what I'm going to do personally or suggest. But it's just unfortunate. When I first got on the board, there was this controversy about having a sign about classrooms being a safe place. Well, I think it's important, especially with these 2 personal incidents, and one of this mother, she was crying and just didn't know what to do. I think we need to, as a district, we need to do something about teaching kids that it's not, and I don't think it's okay to just say kids are going to be kids. And I know they are, but we as adults should do something to intervene, and not just on racial issues. Kids who have weight issues, and kids who wear glasses. I mean, just all the different ways that young kids tease other kids. And we have to try to address that, so those that are going to school can feel safe, no matter what they look like, no matter who they are, no matter what they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we are going to go into executive session for SDCL 1-25-2.1. There will be no further action afterwards. I need a motion. Jim? Deb? Roll call.
Kate,
Yes.
Troy,
Yes.
Deb, Jim, Clay,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Good night, and thanks everybody for coming.
Drive safely.